Hey guys, so today's video is about 5 palettes that trigger OCD. And this video is a part of my 30-day challenge that I set for myself. Basically, I wanted to upload 30 videos by February 20th in response to YouTube's recent changes to their partner program and my potential demonetization come February 20th. So if you enjoyed this video or the other content on my channel, I would appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below. So I will insert a picture of each palette as I mention it so you can see what I'm talking about, and you can let me know whether you agree or not, whether you think the design of the palette is problematic or if I'm just crazy by myself. So to start with, I'm going to go from least likely to trigger OCD to most likely to trigger OCD. I should put out a disclaimer that obviously OCD is a serious mental condition, but I'm just using it as a shorthand to refer to palettes whose design is not symmetrical, is not orderly, that sort of thing. So please don't leave any hate comments down below about that. Alright, coming in at number 5 is the Hourglass Modernist Eyeshadow Palette. This doesn't bother me personally. I kind of like the organic design of the palette. And as you can see on the screen, the shadows are all touching each other, so that could potentially bother someone. It doesn't bother me personally, but I just wanted to put that in at number 5 as being a potential issue for some people. And it looks like they are actually discontinuing that palette. It got kind of mediocre reviews in terms of its performance, so that may be the driving factor. They are replacing those with a series of palettes that have 5 shades also, but those 5 shades are in different pans, so you don't have that touching issue. In at number 4 is the recent set of palettes that MAC released. And I don't know if there's a name for the general collection, but it's basically the Fashion Fanatic palette, the Mischief Minx palette, the Prissy Princess palette, the Rocking Rebel palette, etc. So as you can see, there's one large pan on the right hand side, and I believe that shade is either a highlight or a blush. And I don't mind there being a larger pan size devoted to a face product, but what does kind of annoy me is they have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 eyeshadows to the left of that larger pan. There's 3 shadows that are slightly larger, and then there are 5 shadows that are smaller. And the 3 larger shadows are kind of interspersed with the smaller shadows. And the larger pans, they're a mix of shimmer and matte. So there's no real distinguishing factor between the large and small pan size. It's just the way it's laid out is kind of confusing, and your eye has to kind of hunt throughout the palette to kind of figure out what's going on and what shades you want to use where. So I just don't think it's the best design for a palette. In at number 3, a whole lot of palettes to talk about from the Balm. And the palette that originally bothered me was the Tude nude eyeshadow palette, where they have all these different pinup models and their bits are being covered by strategically placed pans. And what annoys me is that the pans are all at an angle, so it's just the angle that bothers me so much. I don't know why. I like the shade selection, but the actual layout of the palette it bothers me to the point where I will not purchase it. I did purchase the Balm Voyage Volume 2, which is the sort of male equivalent, and as you can see, they have completely symmetrical, even, parallel pans where the men are standing, so they're not kind of doing that pin-up pose on their knees or whatever, but they have a pan on their top and their bottom as well. But that organization and layout was a lot more attractive to me. And interestingly, the Nude Beach palette, which is, I guess, the 3rd release in this series, it's not as bad as the original one, but they have kind of a similar variation where they have women, I guess 3 women on the palette, and they have just horizontal pans that are parallel on top and bottom. The men, for whatever reason, have a horizontal pan on the top and a vertical pan on the bottom. I'm not going to speculate as to why that is, but it just, there's no reason for it. And I'll go into this more in a minute, but part of the problem with this design or this variation is that if you are applying your eyeshadow and you have a brush, you have to alter the way you dip into the pan depending on how it's oriented. So obviously these palettes are really not targeted towards the professional makeup artist who's, you know, maybe doing a lot of models backstage at a fashion show or on a movie set or whatever, and they have to do a lot of people's makeup really fast. But it's just, I don't know, I think they sacrifice function for form, and the form is not aesthetically pleasing either. So just wanted to mention that. Number 2, I have the Urban Decay and Kristen Leanne Kaleidoscope Dream palette. This has been all over the internet, and this to me just kind of looks like a hot mess. Again, I don't know what her thinking was in including a grand total of 3 different types of shapes. There are circles, there are squares, there are rectangles. The circles are not lined up with each other. There are 2 different sizes of circles. There are at least 2 different sizes of rectangles. Some of the rectangles are vertical, some of them are horizontal. To me, this is just a hot mess, and it doesn't inspire me. It just makes me anxious looking at it. So it's definitely not a product that I will be picking up. I just don't understand it. I guess they're trying to be different and edgy. I'm sure there's some sort of reason for it, but looking at that, not being a follower of Kristen Leanne, it just doesn't appeal to me at all. So that is the Urban Decay palette. And generally, you look at all the Naked palettes, they're very kind of orderly, very easy to look at and to figure out what's going on. So this to me was just kind of a weird palette. Alright, and the champion, the number 1 palette likely to trigger OCD, is the Hidden Treasure palette by Dose of Colors. And this kind of gets back to what I was talking about with some of the palettes from the Balm, in that the palettes are just kind of going every which way. There's no vertical, there's no horizontal, they're just kind of all at angles, and I gather that it's supposed to look like the inside of a treasure chest, like you open it and you see all these jewels kind of laid out before you, but I don't want to have to like search and hunt and go on a treasure hunt for the shadow that I want. I just want it to be easy to look at and to understand what's going on with the palette. Like I said, these palettes are not targeted to the professional makeup artist who has to do things really quickly, but it's just so much wasted space. And the real tragedy here is that the swatches and the colors are actually really pretty, but I will not buy this palette because looking at it, it just confuses me and makes me anxious, and I don't need makeup to do that in my life. Also, like I said, the shadows are kind of going every which way, and you have to alter the angle of your hand to get into whatever shadow you want. So I feel like if you use this palette every day for like a month or 2, you would end up having carpal tunnel syndrome, like just moving your wrist around. So it's not for me. I know Dose of Colors is supposed to have a really great shadow formula, but I will be passing on this one for sure. So I hope you guys enjoyed that look at some palettes that I just will not buy because of the layout. If you guys have any palettes that fit into this category, please leave a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will talk to you soon.